Welcome, everyone, to episode 375 of Just Joshing. I am your host, Joshua Pentolaresco. I write stuff in podcast 2. My guest, part 1 of a two-part conversation with J.M. Frey. This was actually a very personal conversation. There was a lot of really cool things stated here. I'm really a fan of J.M. Frey as a person. She's smart. She's clever. Very talented individual. I've been very, very fortunate in my life doing this podcast, just to meet just amazing people, and J.M. Frey is one of those really amazing people. I actually know exactly what I'd say to her again if I ran into her. I'm going to say that till next time I see you, J.M. But I will say that she's an incredible author, one of the smartest women I've ever met, and definitely an amazing conversation, so definitely check that out. This is airing 12:01 a.m. June 3rd. Normally, I have these episodes up just before the day turns, so I'm waiting until after because of the media blackout, or just the idea that the music industry, I thought I'd join them in not really posting anything new and relevant, to the point that I would even delayed launching my book. I have a book launch to announce, a book to announce the release date on, and I'll do that on the next show. I want to talk about this incident, but before I do, I think we're going to get to the interview first. I always say my political stuff to the very end for a reason. I feel that you guys probably would rather me wait till that long, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to have our conversation with J.M. Frey first, and then after a few words about what's going on today. All right? All right.
Something wicked this way comes. Prairie Gothic is a new collection of psychological horror stories set on the vast Canadian prairies by up-and-coming talents. And we need your help. By contributing to Prairie Gothic through Kickstarter, you can unlock special swag, exclusive contributor-only events, and even have a song written about you. Visit kickstarter.com/profile/prairie soul to find out more and see what's waiting for you in the wide open spaces.
There we go. We are rolling. So basically, I'm here. This was my vacation officially for March. So I didn't go for see my family for Christmas. Because when you're in Vancouver and your family's in Detroit, flying down that time of year is very expensive.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, so this time of year it's not so expensive. So I promised my sister a day. She whipped my ass in cars. If you actually go on Facebook right now, you can literally see her putting all the scoreboards and all that stuff. Right, so yeah, I got my butt kicked, and I'm like, well, since I'm here, see if I can interview some people while I'm here. So I contacted you and one other party. I'm like, let's see what happens, and also I still kind of feel bad because last time I interviewed you, bad things happened with the recording I tried to record like 3 times and just.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That was Scott. It killed me because, well, first off, you and Leanna, it's running a few times in the room. It's like, I'm the dumb one in this conversation.
Well,
and I don't see that in a terrible way. It just you both are incredibly sharp-witted, and it was just like one of those things where you guys, your expertise is that's what we're going into, and it's not. And I'm a generalist. I interview people. Yeah. You learn to become a good generalist because you never know what you're going to run into. Yeah. But a generalist going in a conversation with 2 experts is like. And
but we're really specific about what we know.
Yeah.
Don't touch the table, Jess. You'll rattle the microphone. I have to keep reminding myself that.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it. If you listen to any of my conversations, I leave everything.
You leave everything in?
Cool. Yeah. Include. So you'll see, there's one conversation where we literally changed restaurants, so that whole walk is actually recorded because it's real, right? Yeah. Because it's real. I don't get me wrong. If you ask, if we have part of a conversation where you're like, I don't really want this on the air, I will respect your wish. But I don't mind if a waitress comes. I mean, that's life. Everything has a movement, a moment, and
it's just real.
It's real, right? Chaos is reality. That's just the way it is. Yeah. I've actually, when I've been doing author events and I've been doing stuff, experimenting with different author formats, that's actually what I tried to manipulate is the chaos of the chaos of it.
Yeah, didn't you say that Julie dragged you all the way around CanCon? That's Julie. That's Ultimate Julie.
Yeah. That right. Total chaos. But the thing is, in that chaos, there's a certain
veracity,
but also authenticity.
Yeah.
If you feel something's really polished, even if you know it, like you can hear it, even if it's not a conscious thing, it's a very real thing. Whereas if you add these little details, it's like, okay, this has to be real because who would do that?
Yeah. Cool.
So that's why I like the real stuff. So, but don't worry. Any message you make. I literally had a copy explosion in my podcast, so I dropped it right in the middle of the table. It's like it's in there. And
just save the microphone. That's
it. That's it. That was pretty much it. Yeah. So no worries. Anything can go. So I think we should begin. Well, we have begun, but let's go. Let's talk about you more than me here. So you are like I said when I was talking about this. You're very driven, like expert, like very accomplished woman.
Thank you.
Yes. So why go down the path you chose?
Are you talking about like writing specifically?
Actually, in general, I feel like our writing.
Yeah.
It's us telling our story.
Yeah.
So, but your story started before you got into writing, and so I'd still start there and see how it all ties together.
So interesting that you asked that because I've been having a very introspective weekend. So my parents tell the story that when I was about 4 years old, they walked into the bathroom and I was standing up on the counter in front of the three-way mirror singing and dancing. And that basically they're like, well, I guess we better put her in dance lessons. And I had my first role on stage at the age of 4. And it was community theater, it was Children's Drama Club. I played Cyndi Lauper. But I love telling stories. Apparently I always have. And for me, the big thing was that I was going to be on Broadway. Like, if you've watched Glee, watching, gosh, that show hit so close to home for me. Like, we didn't have a show choir in my high school. But I would have been Rachel Berry if we'd had a show choir. And I did community theater and I did children's theater and I was determined I was going to be an actor. I went to theater school. In retrospect, the theater school that I have realized in talking with other working actors now 20 some odd years later taught me absolutely nothing. I definitely wasted my education at my undergrad. I don't regret it though because I met amazing friends and I wouldn't have started writing fan fiction the way I wrote it then. And I definitely wouldn't have met the people who encouraged me to become a professional writer, but yeah, in retrospect, I learned nothing about being an actor. Nothing at all. And then I kind of got out of that program and was like, I have no idea what to do with my life. I think I might move to the other side of the planet for a little while. As one does when one is obsessed with Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball. I became an English teacher in Japan.
That's awesome.
And it was, so I made a point of moving to an area of Japan where one of my teachers at Brock had studied with a no troupe. And I thought, that'd be really neat if I could be the second white woman who's ever studied with this no troupe. That'd be great. And I started taking Nihonbuyo lessons, which is the kind of women's dance that the geisha do. And I was looking for a Seiyu sensei, which is the Japanese art of voice acting. And then I got hit by a car. And that was that. I couldn't walk. I was in a cast for 6 weeks. I was you can't really be in a wheelchair in Japan. It's not a very accessible place, but I scooted around on an office chair for a couple months, and I walked on a cane for the rest of that year. And when it came time for me to renew my contract with the school, I was just like, I have to have knee surgery, and I don't want to have it in Japanese. I want my mummy. I want to move home. So I moved home, I had the knee surgery, walked for another couple years on the cane. I have had another accident since because of that first accident. So I do walk with a cane. Those 6 weeks with my leg in a cast where I was just like, this is it. This is the end of my career. This is literally the end of my career. I cannot tap dance anymore, which is what I was best at. I cannot do ballet. I cannot stand on a stage for 3 hours. I cannot. And there are no roles on Broadway for women in wheelchairs. So what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I had nothing. And I had an absolute existential crisis on the other side of the planet. Because how was I supposed to tell stories anymore? And at the same time, thank God for Harry Potter fandom, because I was huge into fan fiction and writing that for fun. And that was just a hobby. Like, writing was just a hobby. It was just something I did for fun. I've been writing fan fiction since 1991 when I was writing for Dracula the series. I still have a crush on Jody Johnson. It's disgusting. Every time he comes to town to do a show, I'm like, can I get tickets to that show? I want to go watch it. It's terrible. I have a horrible schoolgirl crush on Jody Johnson.
There are worse things.
I know, and there are worse people to have a crush on. Him and Grant Wyn Davies. It'd be still my heart. And Lindy Booth. Canada makes really hot actors. I'm just gonna say that. And talented, more than hot, talented. Anyway, okay, moving on. We're not talking about all of my crushes, television crushes.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, maybe the next question.
Yeah.
Some of them live in this neighborhood, so we have to watch what we're saying. I just have to watch the door. Yeah, so I was doing all this writing, and I had a TA in university who had said, you're really not sucky at this. Like, maybe you should try to write something original. And I wrote this like 3,000-page monster. It's disgustingly huge. Novel that was
to just like devour paper as if it's grow.
It's like a mushroom. I mailed it to myself, and it cost me like $30 to mail it to myself for registered mail for the copyright. I opened it a couple of years ago, and I measured it. It's on my Instagram if you want to go back through my Instagram. I think the manuscript was like 6 full inches. Or maybe it was like 3.5, something like that. There's a photograph.
So not only is this a novel, but it's also a weapon of mass destruction. You can just
I know.
I
could absolutely. I could knock down walls with this manuscript, and I had worked on it kind of through university. I'd stopped when I wrote my undergrad thesis because there was no time to do anything else. And then when I was living in Japan, I kind of noodled with it some more, but, I did it for Nano, but I just didn't really, it just wasn't good. And I couldn't, I just didn't know. So then I got hit by the car, and I was laid up, and a friend of mine said, listen, why don't you put that book away, try something new, try something completely different, just write a story. And I've told the story of how Triptych came about in many other podcasts and interviews, so I won't rehash it here. Short version is, I was in the onsen, I realized I was 25 years old, and my mother was turning 50 that year, and then we were exactly half each other's age. And at 25, my mother had a husband and a baby and a house and a job, and at 25 I was on the other side of the planet in a cast sitting naked in a room full of other naked Japanese ladies. And I thought, what would happen if 25-year-old me met 25-year-old her? Would we like each other? And I was like, I think we would. I think my mom would like me. And then I thought, but what if we didn't? And that's where Triptych came from. So it was a short story that I ended up selling after I moved back from Japan, but before that I showed it to a couple of my fan fiction friends, and somebody said, and then? What happens after this 30,000 words? And that's kind of how I got onto that path, and it was sort of the writing replaced the acting for me as a storyteller. I still do community theater where I can, small roles, and I really love voice acting when I can get into a booth, but for me it was really the writing is what replaced that form of storytelling for me.
I could see it because Okay, so we were talking off air about some of my aspirations after my I get to the next crazy phase of my life, right? But one of the things is I've had experiences working in, like, I've done some behind the scenes movie work already.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really amazed me, and I had talked to my actor friends who were in these roles, is like what they like, the stories they tell themselves to play the role. That's a very understated part of acting. It's not just the words on the page with an actor. It's okay, how can I relate to this person? What can I bring to this role?
What are they thinking in this exact moment, and how do I make it clear to the camera that I'm thinking that thing?
Yeah, exactly. Which, although writing can't fully replace that acting role, the fact is writers use a lot of the same tools.
I actually use a lot of my acting exercises. This is something that someone. It's really interesting when you're talking to. So I run a series of workshops for writers, and one of them is reading for writers, and it's basically how to get up in front of an audience and read what you're doing. And I teach basically improv exercises. But one of the things I do is when we talk about the craft of writing, and people say to me, oh, I have writer's block, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here, I don't know how to handle this problem, I don't know how to handle that problem, I always teach them acting exercises. Get up, go have a conversation with a character, go for a walk, be kinetic, engage with your brain, and I teach them different character building exercises that I learned in theater school. So as much as I said I learned nothing about acting in theater school, I did learn exercises.
Yeah, and it's interesting because now, like in terms of my income, I'm working on my first novel's about to come out. I'm working on my second novel, which the fun part of it is like, okay, I have a killer cupcake running amok.
Okay.
Yes. It's my homage to Pac-Man. It legitimately it's my homage to Pac-Man.
Okay.
So the backstory is, it's really simple. A bakery decides to get into the weapons business.
As one does.
As one does.
Yeah.
And it accidentally creates like a blob monster that goes out on an out of control rampage.
Which is a cupcake. All right.
Yeah.
All right. And how do you connect with that cupcake in your improv exercises?
Because so for me, it's my throwback to Darkwing Duck, specifically Bushroot and Spike. Specifically Bushroot and Spike.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like it's a match. So the world building is, I'm in a world of intellectual property, and everything is about genetic intellectual property specifically, right?
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah, right. So that's the serious, and it's got some really, really serious undertones to it, but it also occurs to me, right? We're going to be experimenting on ourselves quite a bit going forward.
Yeah.
So I have a character in there that he starts off, his name's Hatemer. He's basically a living boombox. His whole dialogue is our song lyrics. Right, that's right. But it occurred to me someone would actually do that, and in his evolution of the character, is I turn him from hate music to love music. And there's a journey, and so his whole character is literally his soundtrack. And I thought that's an interesting, because someone would come up with a way. It's like, you know what, I want to just listen to music all the time. And that's how I want to communicate. And someone might do that. So that's the. So I'm like, I can do the serious stuff, which is like the real issues in terms of what constitutes a human being, what kind of ownership, and I talk about that. But on the flip side, I also have the silly stuff where it's like, okay.
But the best comedy is drama.
Yeah, exactly.
So
absolutely.
That's fascinating.
Right, and right, because that's. So I'm teasing people right now because I was like, who wants to get killed by the cupcakes? Literally, there's going to be a Twitter. The first page.
I want to get killed by a cupcake.
Okay, we can make that happen.
All right.
Okay.
Killed by a chocolate cupcake. That's appropriate.
Actually, the request was if I had a friend, a coworker, but she literally, I called her the Cupcake Empress. That's the name of the company.
Okay.
Right. I made it in honor of her. So she's like, her favorite cupcake made was a red velvet cupcake. So it's going to be a red velvet cupcake, which just gets.
That becomes a blob.
Yeah.
That's appropriate because one of those would kill me.
Yes. Yeah. So it's just one of those things. And the other thing too, just a little aside, if you go, who wants to die in my book? You know how many people raise their hands like, oh, pick me. And it's like, I never thought it would be such a big thing.
It's a lot of fun though.
Yeah.
I've auctioned off naming characters, and I did a contest to name a ship. unfortunately, in a book that ended up not happening. I wrote the first couple chapters, and it just agent didn't love it, publisher didn't love it, fizzled on the vine. So unfortunately, but I love the name of the ships. I'm going to keep them for something else if I ever write in that genre again.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But my ultimate point was, I'll go back to that and then we'll go forward, is what I've become more fascinated at now in terms of, and I don't just look at it in terms of character motivations, I even look at like my story, how I describe things.
Yeah.
It's like, so what's the story I'm trying to tell here? Because as I've gotten wiser in the craft, and I realize if I don't actually have to say it, right? If I don't have to actually say it, it's actually stronger.
One of the things that I find that a lot of authors forget is that your audience isn't stupid.
Yes.
Your audience doesn't need to be hand-fed, spoon-fed, everything. And this is something that I find very... it depends on the author, but I find that, like, for example, Dune. I never read. I couldn't read it. First off, my name is Jessica. My brother's name is Paul, so that makes it difficult.
Yes.
And my parents were not Dune fans. They didn't even know that they'd done what they'd done. So firsthand, it was like, okay, I don't think I can read a book about my brother Paul. But on top of that, it was just, I got through the first chapter, and I was like, this author doesn't trust me. Nothing about the way that this author is communicating to me, the reader, indicates that he thinks I'm smart enough to get what he's trying to say, and I feel very condescended to, and I feel very talked down to, and I shut the book after the end of the first chapter and was finished. I have no desire, maybe I'll go watch the new Dune movie that's coming out, but I have no desire to enter that world or to spend any time with that author because he doesn't trust me. On the other hand, I just finished reading, oh my god, Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I know everybody's talking about it, but there's a reason everyone's talking about it. It's freaking phenomenal. I devoured it in one day. I started it a Saturday morning, and I didn't go to bed till it was finished. And Casey McQuiston trusts absolutely her readers. She drops hints. She lets you put two and two together. She lets you feel a little more clever than the characters. She lets you figure things out 5 seconds before the characters figure them out.
Actually, and she's probably really good in this thing. What I've learned too is good storytellers, really good ones, actually give the game away even earlier than that usually.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things that I really love Sherlock Holmes as a concept. But I've read about half of the stories, and I kind of stopped because I find John Watson is the ultimate unreliable narrator.
Yes, he is.
He downplays himself so much that you have to make up the way that John was involved in whatever happened because he wouldn't dare put himself into Sherlock's narrative. But Doyle as a creator really frustrates me because he doesn't let you solve the mystery alongside Holmes like Agatha Christie does. She lets you solve the mystery alongside her characters. And I know the whole conceit of Holmes is that he's so clever that he figures out things that you never could have, but then it just made me skip to the end of the book. You know, like I read that, I would read the setup of the story, and then I would skip to the end of the story because literally none of the stuff in the middle of the story mattered.
So Holmes is interesting for another reason.
Yeah.
And here's the other reason Holmes is an interesting character, interesting case study of this. Because at some point you can tell he really hates his character. He does not like Holmes.
Oh yeah. That's obvious.
Yeah, he does not like Holmes personally.
Yeah.
And the problem Doyle ran into, and this happens to a lot of writers, he literally found himself in a weird hell because. He's making his living doing what he wants to do more than anything else.
Yeah, but
he's writing about someone he absolutely loves, and especially when he gets to the point where he's resurrected. Yeah, you can definitely tell. It's like, okay, I'm bringing him back, but like there's like a giant middle finger to the audience. To the audience on that.
And then he starts doing this thing, and he started doing it. He started doing it halfway through the series. Was that John Watson, our narrator, is not present during the climax of the story. So everything is related. Oh, and then I did this, and then I did that. And it's like, well, then why am I reading any of this if I don't get to be in the moment with the characters?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with related narrative, but the way that he did it was just like, well, I don't see the point in continuing to read what you're writing, Mr. Doyle, because you're not going to let me try to figure it out with Mr. Holmes, and you're not going to let me even see the climax. So then what's the point of anything here?
Yeah, and so like that's the really fascinating thing about Doyle.
Yeah.
That's actually the fascinating thing. 'Cause you can do this in the study of a neat concept of a character.
Yeah.
Because I studied in Scarlet. It's a really good story.
It's an excellent story.
Yeah.
And so is A Study in Emerald. Have you read that?
No, I'm not actually.
It's some of the best fan fiction on the planet. Like,
Yeah.
it's such a well put together story because
Yeah.
Gaiman tricks us
Yes.
in a way that Doyle always tricked us, but it doesn't feel mean the way that Doyle did it.
Okay, so Neil Gaiman is interesting to me. He's
Yeah.
someone I acknowledge is good.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite do it for me
I
the
think
same way that, say, Charles DeLint did it for me, or Ray Bradbury did it for me,
I think Gaiman is a phenomenal storyteller.
no, absolutely.
I think he's an adequate wordsmith.
Yes.
See, and this is the thing about like Good Omens, which is really big right now. What I really love about Good Omens is that you can tell is that it's Gaiman's ideas and Pratchett's writing.
And with a sprinkle of Terry in there too.
Yeah, and like,
Yeah.
and Pratchett, he was such a fantastic wordsmith. The way
Yes.
he crafted sentences, and Gaiman is a good writer with a good handle on the English language, but he's good. He's not
Pratchett.
excellent.
Yeah.
And I find, and the thing about Gaiman is because he is writing good sentences, he's very accessible. And I think that's what's made him so popular.
Absolutely.
Excellent ideas with good writing that's very accessible and very easy for the modern audience to read.
Yeah. And like I said, and I think if I had read him first, instead
Yeah.
of Ray Bradbury or Charles DeLint or something
Yeah.
like that, I would be a bigger fan of him than I am.
Yeah.
Again, this is me. Like strictly speaking, from a professional standpoint, he's good. And anyone tells me they love Neil Gaiman, I can't fault them. It just, for me, it just
Yeah.
it's one of those people that when I read him, I'm like, this is good.
Yeah.
It just doesn't do it for me the same way that Roger Zelazny does it for me,
Yeah.
or
But
Fonda Lee does it.
everybody's got their like
Yeah.
that one author that they just go, oh my god, like
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And he's just not it for me. And
Yeah.
you know what? But again, nothing but respect for him. And I would never in a million years say he's terrible.
yeah,
Right.
No, he's not. He's
Yeah.
not. Anyway, the point of me bringing up Study in Emerald is, it's fascinating. So going back to my story, what you were saying about how did I get where I am, it's really fascinating because I started as a fan fiction writer, and all of those fan fiction tropes. The self-insert characters, the coffee shop AU, the blunt lamp shading, the meta narrative, all of the things that you find a lot of in fan fiction are in my story because that's where I trained to be a writer, is on LiveJournal and BraveNet and Yahoo groups. Yes, that's how old I am. I posted my first fan fiction on BraveNet.
High five.
And I always find it interesting that I find it really fucking frustrating, actually, is what I find it, not interesting, that when a woman writes fan fiction, it's fan fiction. When a man writes fan fiction, it's revisionist literature.
This is new to me, so you have to forgive me on that one.
Yeah, so it's and it's becoming more accepted, which is nice. But when I first started writing, some of my work got really dismissed because it was like, oh well, this is just like Mary Sue fan fiction, and I'm like, yes, the main character's name is Mary. That's the point. I'm literally making a comment on Mary Sue fan fiction, which I wrote my master's degree on. This is literally what this is. This is me talking about the value of women's fan work and the way that like quilting and knitting and all of these craft oriented skills that women have, they're devalued because they're coded feminine. But when, and I have nothing against him for doing this, when Neil Gaiman writes A Study in Emerald, it's a wonderful story. When a fangirl, air quotes, writes Sherlock fan fiction and is published in a book just like Neil Gaiman's was and is in bookstores just like Neil Gaiman's was, it's just fan fiction. So it's been a really interesting hurdle for me to have to try to not even jump over, to try to sledgehammer into non-existence with my career, because I keep getting told that I need to strip the fanishness out of my work. I need to stop writing about women and conventions and cosplay and all these things. And I'm like, but this is my lived experience. This is my life. People spend weekends playing soccer and hockey. I spent weekends putting together Inuyasha cosplays and going to Fan Expo with my friends. Like that was my lived childhood. That's my lived existence. How dare you tell me that it's not worthy of putting into a book? And this is changing. Luckily, fans are now in control of a lot of, the medium of production. So we're not letting ourselves be talked down about. But at the same time, you still have Episode 1 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Coulson makes some joke about sweaty cosplay Iron Man girls hanging out at the base of Avengers Tower. And I'm like, Joss man, Mr. Whedon, your entire career exists because of those sweaty fangirls, so fuck you a little bit. Right?
Joss is a very interesting study of stuff.
Yeah, that's an entirely different podcast.
That yes, and also on personal, I think Liana did it best years ago. She nailed it pretty good. I never was a crazy Joss Whedon fan.
I loved Buffy because it was wonderful to see. I mean, I was Willow growing up, so it was wonderful to see myself on the screen. I enjoyed it. The world has evolved and his work hasn't. Moving on.
Yes, that's a fair thing.
Yeah.
And actually, off that top, that's the one thing I'm kind of worried about as I'm coming into this is.
Yeah.
I think more and more as time goes on, and this is because again we're becoming much more niche as we're evolving, and it makes sense because the traditional marketplace is fragmenting, and because it's fragmenting, it's now it's more about finding your audiences, whoever they are.
Yeah.
So I find that now more than anything else is and even with when I put stuff together, the Cloud Dagger, which is we talked about the killer cupcake stuff earlier. My first book has a unicorn that parts rainbows. I have a unicorn head. right. But the thing is, see what you did. You're laughing, you're amused, it stands out. It's unique. It's something that, and as I think more and more time goes on, I'm looking at the fact that I think it's those little things that make you stand out.
As long as you're not trying to be novel for the sake of being novel, and that's the thing that I'm when people are like, I'm going to do this kitschy thing in order to grab the audience and get their money, and it's cool, but you still have to tell a story and you still have to tell a why.
Absolutely no. Yeah. Here's the thing: it has to be an authentic place, right?
Yeah.
Okay, for example, the cupcake thing, that is an authentic place, and the reason it's an authentic place is because. For me, I'm talking about intellectual property. I'm talking about gaming.
Yeah.
I'm talking about big concepts.
Yeah.
Now it's what little fun things could add to make it fun in the middle of the story, because the tone needs it, right? You're right. The tone just needs it, and also, where can I have fun? Because if I'm having fun, there's an authenticity to it that will translate on the page to the reader. Yeah. It's like when I do my Dr. Seuss offs. Right? I actually do Dr. Seuss offs where I make the audience actually come and read Dr. Seuss in different strange and wonderful ways. And so Sean Bird, for example, did an operatic version of Cat in the Hat that you have to listen to believe. It was hilarious last year. Right?
Okay.
And then also Naomi Davis did Boxing the Sauce in a Yoda voice. You just have to but see,
interesting.
Right. So here's the thing, right? And this is something I learned a long time going back to chaos. Right. Encouraging people to have fun, encouraging people to step out, and doing it in a way that you're comfortable with. Yeah. I think in the long run, and this is true with storytelling, acting. Yeah. It's finding how you tell your story in a way that feels authentic and real to you. Mm-hmm. That also is feels inviting to everybody else so they can come play with you. That's what we're doing.
And again, it's so interesting that you say, and they come play with you.
Exactly.
Because, again, this is going all the way back to my work is all about being a fan and fandom and valuing creativity for the sake of creativity without saying it needs to be your side hustle. It has to become your hobby. You can just make art for art's sake.
Absolutely.
You can just make music for music's sake. You can just dance because you love it. And it just, welcome to, late stage capitalism. It doesn't have to be a business. But what you were saying about like making space for other people to come play, it's really interesting because that's a conversation that I have with myself constantly while I'm writing is does this moment need to be on the page, or is this moment something that the fan fiction authors can deal with later?
And on the same token, it's like maybe a challenge to take one step farther. Are you having fun with this? And if the answer is yes, then the answer is yes. Chances are your readers will take it.
Yes, but it's something that I keep going back and forth on. Like I don't know if you've read the Accidental Turn series, but
I have the first book in it. I kept it with. So after I interviewed you in the right, I actually got one of your books. I can't remember. I think the first one was the series. I got
The Untold Tale.
Yes, I got that one, and so I was like, I'm going to read this.
It's huge, though, isn't it?
It's not the huge part that's intimidating. Here's the problem I have personally. Do you know how many authors I'm friends with? That's something that I've had to learn how to do is to give myself permission to not read my friends' work. Yes. It's a very difficult thing as a writer because you want to read everything that everyone writes, but what if, here's the thing is, I have a friend who writes this incredible queer space opera, and he is amazing, and he's a wonderful writer, and his work is fantastic, and I read the first book, and the problem is, I love his writing, and I hate space opera. I hate reading it. I don't like space opera. I don't want to, and it took me a really long time to give myself permission to just not read his other books. So for me, it's a matter of time. Because here's the problem I have. I'm also in I'm at as of this recording. There are 327 episodes of my podcast out there right now.
Yeah. Wow. Congratulations.
So it's a time thing for me. It really is.
And for me as well, because it's like I could sit and read every book from every writer I know, or I could write another one.
Yes. Or I could do a podcast, or I can write another book, or something like that. And I have to find that finding that balance. But it makes you feel better. When I did my last call, I made sure to put yours in kind of like a.
Thank you. Well, okay. So the reason I bring it up is because it's 3 novels, 3 novellas, 4 short stories. So there's the 3 novels that were published independently, and then there's a 4th. I call it my Cimmerillion. It's a collection of the 4 novellas, the 4 short stories, some behind-the-scenes stuff. There's a lullaby in the second book that Bridget O'Regan, the if you go on YouTube, Violin Girl Surprises Cosplayers with Their Themes, that's Bridget, actually composed the tune for the lullaby, and I have the sheet music in the book. So there's all these extra things in there, but the one thing I didn't really put in there is how Kintyre and Bevel actually get together. And it's something that happens in the first book. Sorry, I just realized, wow, that's a major spoiler. I just spoiled that for you. But there are 2 side characters who go away, and then there's this romantic moment that happens off page, and when they come back into the narrative, they're a couple. And did you guys go up north? That's one of the biggest questions I get from readers is how did they get together? How did they get together? Are you ever going to write that? Are you ever going to write that? And because I'm a giant freaking Jane Austen romantic at heart, I keep thinking, my God, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write this story. One of these days I'm going to write the story of how Kin and Bev get together, and it's going to be amazing, it's going to be romantic. And every time I think about how it could happen, and I have like 600 different versions of how it happened, I think, first off, I don't want to privilege any one of those versions, because the minute I put it down on paper, that's the reality.
Yes.
And I don't want just one reality. I want 100 realities. And I think I will never write how they get together. I will. It doesn't have, because anything that anyone imagines is going to be better than what I put on the page. And going back to the fan fiction thing, I want 100 versions on Archive of Our Own. You know, you go on AO3 and there's 600,000 stories about how Sherlock Holmes and John Watson get together.
Yes.
And how Crowley and Aziraphale finally admit their feelings to one another, and how Jessica Jones and there's how people get together, how characters with UST and romantic tension get together is the backbone of fan fiction.
Yes.
And I don't want to pave over that garden.
No.
I want there to be space, that sandbox you said, for people to grow as many different versions of that getting together as possible.
You have to, I think that's something a lot of authors don't fully realize in the moment they're doing it.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that, having come from fan fiction and understanding how really intensely creative readers engage with media texts, has helped me as an author. Because I know so many writers who feel like they have to put it on the page. They have to put everything on the page. It has to be there. I am the ultimate authority. I mean, like Anne Rice is an example of the wrong version of the ultimate authority. She shouts everyone down. She puts every microsecond of every character's life on the page. And God, it's boring. It's just like, I've stopped reading her work because, well, first off, like, she's crazy and she goes off on her fans, and I'm just like, no, if you can't appreciate the money that I've given you for the last 2 decades supporting you, then you don't need to have any more from me. And secondly, she just writes the same thing over and over again, and she doesn't allow for any sort of breathing room in her own work, which takes all the fun out of engaging with it. And I think that's something that a lot of writers, they get paranoid and they feel like they have to put every moment of the story on the page and every emotion, and you have to tell us exactly what color the curtains are and exactly what this person felt at the time. And that you don't have to tell me that this character's angry. Show me that this character's angry. Let me infer it myself. Let me have the space to grow the flowers in your own garden.
Yeah, well, there's that, but there's and going back, like I realized, again, this is something I've been realizing as I've gotten older. I just did a 2,000-word short story.
Yeah.
I was really proud of myself.
Yeah.
It's about a fairy that gets trapped in a bottle. I'm sorry, this is my Legend of Zelda little homage.
Yeah, sure.
Right? But I did a horror version of it.
Yeah.
So it gets trapped in by a funky light, traps the fairy into the bottle.
Yeah.
Then another spirit with a similar light than what was previously there,
Yeah.
right, is also gets trapped, and together they have to escape. Mm-hmm. Right? And they have to escape quickly. Right, and they escape to the town of chickens. So there's definitely, if you ever play The Legend of Zelda, you will get that reference.
Okay.
Right, you will get that reference,
Yeah.
Okay? YouTube Legend of Zelda chickens. You'll understand it when you see it, okay? Right?
Yeah, I think my wife.
So I did that story in 2,000 words. I realized the important thing was, like, what's the story I'm actually telling?
Yeah.
Right? What needs to be here?
Yeah.
And
She has the other.
to be very honest, as I've gotten, again, older/wiser,
Yeah.
not a whole lot actually needs to be there.
Yeah.
The trick is, okay, you have to control the experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the thing. You have to control the experience of what that world, whatever that world or story you're telling.
Mm-hmm.
You control the experience.
Yeah.
You let your readers control the interpretation.
That's a wonderful way to put that.
You're right.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
There's a balance, and that's the balance. You control the experience. Anything that has to do with the experience, that's yours.
That's around.
Yeah.
Anything that has to do with the interpretation, you know what?
Yeah.
You can have it.
Yeah.
Right?
And obviously you're going to influence that interpretation
Yeah.
by how you control the experience.
Exactly. But again, there's always my favorite Asimov. I have 3 Asimov stories I really love. One of them is called The Willard Ball.
Okay.
So it's a murder, or is it a murder? Mm-hmm. It's about 2 professors that play pool
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, and one of them is trying to make this power source that the other thinks is impossible.
Yeah.
He succeeds. He gets his friend, and he uses the pool table. The irony is the pool table was the catalyst to this power source.
Huh.
So he lets his friend take a shot. It works, but there's an accident, and his buddy gets killed with a Billibar on his heart. The question is, and these are experts people, there's enough, so I thought this leaves a very good question. Did he murder his friend?
Yeah.
Because he inherits everything when it's over. He benefits tremendously from it.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, he was not a quick thinker. He's not someone that goes out and has an impulse to do something and acts out on it. It's just not his personality.
So he sets up the experience, and it's the interpretation essentially.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about whether or not, and he creates enough doubt both ways.
Yeah.
And they're both interesting interpretations. They're both interesting answers.
Yeah.
It's an accident that his buddy overlooked.
Yeah.
Or maybe he didn't deliberately. And there's an argument, and there's a great argument both ways. Right? And it's like, that's what you're doing. Right? That's what science fiction teaches fiction. It's like, you don't necessarily need a perfect answer. In fact, it's better if it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Make an answer that lets the readers choose, because no matter what the reader chooses,
that's the correct answer.
It's the correct, and they will feel satisfied with it.
Yeah.
Because what you've done is it's plausible in the story. As long as you're not cheating your audience in your answer.
And again, that's going back to what frustrates me about Doyle is I feel like he's cheating me constantly.
Absolutely. Especially when you get to the second half of his career with Holmes.
Yeah.
There's definitely a sense of spite, though. You can definitely listen, reread.
But you can be spiteful to the character and still be respectful to the reader. And
he was trying to get. My theory is he was just trying to do anything he could to get out of it.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't. Like the popularity, the momentum of it. He was trapped in a weird hell, and that was him rebelling against it any way he could. That's my feeling about it.
No, I think you're correct.
Yeah.
I think he was just hoping that he could create a flop so the Strand would be like, you know what, we don't need another one from you.
Yeah.
And he couldn't manage to create that flop.
Yeah, no matter what he did.
Yeah.
And so it's just he was stuck with it, right?
Yeah.
Now, the tragedy is, the real tragedy in that particular instance, what if he had liked the character? Right? Because if he had liked the character and given it the respect he deserved for the second half, could you imagine the other opportunities that might have opened up for him if he had done that?
Yeah.
He never thought about it that way.
But he had Holmes made him all the money he needed, and he was able to go open the Pinkerton agency, and he was able to go, or not open, but train the Pinkerton detectives. He was able to go hang out with Houdini. He got everything he wanted out of his career. The problem is he had to continue his career, and he didn't want to continue it.
Yes.
So,
but like.
This episode of Just Joshing is sponsored by Indie Imprint. Indie Imprint supports creators by creators. Whether you are writing a book or creating a video game, Indie Imprint works with its clients to produce, edit, and present their projects to the world. For more information, check out their website at www.indieimprint.com.
And that was my conversation with J.M. Frey. Or at least part one of it, I should say. Part two will air Thursday at its regular time. There's a reason. I'll just say this before I move on. I really dug this conversation. I think J.M. Frey is one of the most talented, smartest women I've ever had on the show. I always use the word talent a lot. The truth is, I am very fortunate and blessed because I see so many amazing people to come in there of all races, creeds, colors, religions, sexualities, you name it. I'm very fortunate. I meet these incredibly amazing individuals day in and day out. I don't take it for granted. But even in all them, I mean, J.M. Frey does stand out. Super smart, sharp, brilliant woman. I really, really believe in you, and I think you're just getting started. In part two, I'm going to sing your praises even more. But with today, yeah, kind of really, really horrifying to see what's going on down south, huh? I lived in the States. I've seen quite a lot of different things. Racism isn't unfamiliar to me, at least being around it. Intelligence discerns difference. I think one thing that doesn't get the nod the way it should is how we're wired and how we're built. Intelligence discerns difference. Understand that. We always look for things that are different from us, who think differently, react differently, look differently. But for whatever reason, the natural impulse is to be afraid of the unknown and not understanding. And I remember living in the States, so I have two horrifying little stories here. I'm going to tell you about the worst two cases of racism I have personally ever witnessed. The first one was in Phoenix, Arizona. And it started off innocent enough, actually. I was there. I was going to the San Diego Comic Con in the Greyhound station there. We were about to board the bus. And I remember this really, really pretty gal from Texas, blonde hair, blue eyes. She's a gorgeous woman, right? And, I was actually taken at the time. I was like, well, I'm not going to hit on you that hard, but hey, listen, guys like being around pretty women. We do. We just built that way. Most of us are anyway. I am built that way at the very least. Let's leave it at that. Anyway, we start playing pinball. A couple of other guys join us. It's a good time was had by all. And then I'll never forget. I never forget one thing. She just says this out of the blue. I don't know what possessed her to say it, but it was like, "Hey guys, do you think God made black people?" I was like, "What?" And it just went downhill fast. I mean, I basically bailed on the conversation. I had never seen anything like that before in my life. And it got worse. Our driver was black and African American. And she walked right up to him. And I'm not even going to repeat what she said. I couldn't believe it. I never thought I'd see that in a million years. And yet, here I was seeing it. The second worst one is in Calgary, Alberta. It wasn't not involving an African American, it was involving a Native American. Or actually, the people in general. I was working for a grocery store, a small chain grocery store. I'm not going to name it because I simply do not want to have my bank account touched. But I remember, I'll never forget this. One day, the owner of the store comes in a huff, just a big huff. He's upset. He goes, "I don't want you to let any Native people in the store." Okay? Because, you've been robbed and he's by certain people in that minority, but I don't want any of them in there. None. This is Canada. This is not how you treat people. And I do think one of the things, the only thing I would say is, yeah, Black Lives Matter. But so do people from Spanish descent, Puerto Rican descent, Native American descent, Samoan descent. There are a lot of cultures in the United States that do not get the privileges, the basic decent right to be human beings. And they should. Because honestly, they are no different than anybody else in the sense that they just want to live and let live. And that's most people. You strip away all the bullshit, that's what most people are. We all have our dreams, we all have our goals and desires. But when you get right down to it, live and let live. I mean, who fucking cares? But, but here, as well as, elsewhere, we discern difference. But sometimes we lack the wisdom to move past it. Is there an answer? I think so. Miranda Crocs are a really, really great poem. I remember it because to me, I thought that was the answer. It's the simplest answer. It may be the best answer. Perhaps the only way to not come back to this point again is our children. Teach them not to hate each other. And I was thinking, I thought about Miranda Krogstad in particular because she wrote a little poem about her bloodline and where she came from. And I thought about that. It's like, that's an incredibly brilliant way to say love conquers all. And that's my hope going forward. As terrible as this is right now, someday I hope, we get to the point where we can look at each other and go, I understand. We are not there today, though. And that truly makes me sad. So, yeah, I don't have a good answer. I wish I had a better one, but maybe. And that will do it for this episode of Just Joshing. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so a number of different ways. Subscribe to the podcast. I'm on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, pretty much any platform you can imagine. I'm there. Just look me up, find the logo, you'll find it. Listen, share, subscribe. Let people know I'm out there. It's great. My book, The Cloud Diver, currently available now. It is now a Kindle exclusive, and it will be for the next 90 days. If you guys want to support the podcast, support it, go buy it at the links provided in the description, as is my merchandise. If you have some extra money, you want to give me some merch to support the podcast, happy to receive. You can also check out my YouTube channel, Joshua Pantellaresco. Same thing, subscribe, share. My Twitter and Instagram is at jpantellaresco. My Facebook page is Joshua Pantellaresco, author, podcaster. Keep telling your stories out there. Stay inspired and chase joy, because now more than ever, we need it. All right, guys. See you next time.
Josh.